Thank you, everyone, for joining us here for the Gifts of God program, our Sunday gathering lecture. And this week, I was really moved by this section in the teacher's manual. We made the podcast on it. It was a few days ago. Does Jesus have a special place in healing? I thought that was really powerful, what it said. So I wanted to talk about that. And also, I wanted to talk about Tara Singh, my teacher, who I studied the Course in Miracles with from 1989 and until his passing in 2006. And I considered myself a student in the best sense that I received what he had to offer, but I also had my life as my quote unquote workshop that I had to work out all these principles that he was giving me, right? There were two kinds of students. There were students who kind of dropped everything and went to be with him at his foundation in Los Angeles. And he had a 501(c) nonprofit organization called the Foundation for Life Action, and then it morphed into the Joseph Plan Foundation. And that's where he received students to give his lectures, and they helped him produce his workshops and so forth. And some of them lived there in the house where he rented, and some of them lived in apartments around that house. But every day he gave two presentations, one in the early morning around 7 o'clock, and then one around 5 o'clock in the early evening. And then during the day, people had work to do for the foundation. And then they also had meals, 3 meals a day. They prepared 3 meals a day for anyone working there and also any visitors. And often I was a visitor. I might stay for a week or two, or I think one time I stayed for like 6 weeks. And this was like, they fed me, they housed me. So it was a wonderful experience to be there. But also it's wonderful to have his teachings, have his guidance, and also have my life that I had to work all that out in, you know? And I think as students of the Course in Miracles, that's very important, that it's for the working person. It's not for people that want to go off and join a monastery or be in an ashram or go meditate in a cave. It's for a working person engaged in the world, using the principles on a daily basis in their everyday life. And I think that's the forte of the Course in Miracles. But often what you'll have with a teacher such as Tara Singh or Babaji or any great spiritual figure, they have a kind of a receptacle or a vessel to disseminate those teachings and form those relationships. So often they'll have a foundation or an ashram or a place that people can go to meet them. And that's perfectly normal, you know. The difference with Dr. Shukman is she didn't really want to be in that teaching role, even though she scribed this remarkable Course in Miracles. She never saw herself as the one disseminating it to the public. So other people took that role. So Tara Singh was one, and then this other great teacher, Kenneth Wapnick, who was very close to Dr. Shukman, was the other. And they both had teaching foundations where people could actually go and meet them and study. And Kenneth's foundation was primarily responsible for all the international translations of the Course in Miracles. He was very closely tied to the Foundation for Inner Peace that published the Course in Miracles. So he was very instrumental in a lot of the translations in foreign languages. And he took that quite seriously. And often people would come from those countries and spend years with him working on the translations, so that they would be properly translated, and he oversaw all that. So that was one of his functions. He also gave very poignant talks on the content of the course. Tara Singh was a little bit different as a teacher. He was coming out of the Indian school, more or less, because he was from India, and his teacher for many years, like 30 years, was Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti also was out of that Eastern vibration, And I think because he was with Krishnamurti all those years, and Krishnamurti was trying to show humankind the limitations of thought, the limitations of knowledge. And actually, that when we talk about liberation or we talk about freedom, it's really freedom from the known, from the intellectual knowing, from the reservoir of memory that we've accumulated, right? So we have accumulated all this quote unquote knowledge and all of this memory, but within that memory is conflict, war, suffering, all the problems, right? So that the solutions are transcendent of what made up the problems in the first place. So if the brain and thought and memory made the problem, he would say, well, the solution is not there, because you have to go outside the system for the solution. Now, if you look at the Course in Miracles, it's saying the exact same thing that Krishnamurti was saying. It starts with those lessons. Nothing I see means anything. My thoughts don't mean anything. I've made a world of conflict, attack thoughts, grievances, judgments, and all the sorrow in that. So it shows us this self that we made up from thought, from memory, from the known, has the problem, but the solution is not there. The solution is transcendent of all that. And then it shows you, well, you have this self you made up, and then you have this self God created. And let's call that the Christ self. And that's where the solutions are. Not in the self you made up. In fact, you were the one that put yourself in the mess in the first place. So you can't rely on the thing that made the mess, right? You can't rely on your thought processes that made up the problem in the first place to liberate you from the problem. So you have to step outside of the problem. So this is the role of the teacher. Now, when I say teacher, I say that kind of with a capital T. I think we would all agree as students of the Course in Miracles that Jesus, or the Christ, is the teacher who's giving us the teachings from the Course in Miracles. So that's the teacher, capital T. And the teacher is giving us the principles that will help us transcend or rise up, ascend out of this self we made up into this other awareness, and that you could say, well, that's the Christ consciousness. That's the consciousness that has thoroughly accepted the atonement for himself or herself, and they've liberated themselves not only from thought and not only from memory and the known and the past and the future. They've not only liberated themselves from all of that, but they've also liberated themselves from death. And that's what it says in this part. somewhere it says, yes. He's talking about the Christ, and we call on the Christ, right? And what does that mean when we call on the Christ? And then he's describing the Christ. He says the temptation may recur to others. We've repeatedly said that one who has perfectly accepted the atonement for himself can heal the world. Well, the Christ would be this one who has accepted the atonement, which means total forgiveness of himself, total forgiveness of everyone, total forgiveness of the rocks, trees, rivers, universe, right? He's accepted the atonement, and he can heal himself and heal the world. And indeed, he's already done so. And then he's not tempted to go back, it says. Temptation may occur in other people who have not fully accepted the atonement, and we've all noticed that in ourselves. We fall into these grievances and periods of attack and problems and, whatever. We temporarily get fooled, or we fall into that. But the Christ doesn't. The Christ is not fooled. He doesn't ever fall into those lower levels of perception, right? He has overcome death, it says, because he has accepted life. Now, who of us can say that? Have we so much overcome death and accepted life that we've risen into this awareness of our resurrected self, the Christ? I mean, it's all our goal to do that. As students of the Course in Miracles, that is our goal, to do that. And we are on that, if you will, that course of ascension to do that. So I think that let's get clear about that. So what would save us time? What would actually help us ascend, into that awareness, into that being? All right, so this is kind of telling us that we need the Christ. We actually need the example of the teacher in order to do that, because that's the subject of this. Does Jesus have a special role in our healing? The answer is yes, but we have to get in the right perspective to receive it, to invoke him into it, and to make it an actuality, not just a belief system. I was saying yesterday in the mantra breathing, because we were dedicating it to Ganesh, I was saying, well, can we relate to Ganesh not as a mythology, not as an idol, not as some fantasy that we make up, but as an actual energy of a divine clarity or a divine power that can remove obstacles and solve problems. Because that's what Ganesh is. He's an energy that solves our problems and removes our obstacles. So let's just look at Jesus, the Christ, which this is talking about. That's another energy. That's another actuality that we have to make the contact with, not as an idea, but as an actual force in our life, right? So first we have to understand, well, what does he represent? And then can we rise to apply that mindset or that frequency of awareness in ourself? Now this says, well, he's accepted the atonement 100%. He's embraced life and resurrected from death itself. He knows that there is no death, right? That lesson 163, there is no death, the Son of God is free. Only Jesus could say that, because he's proven it. He's resurrected many times, and so he can say there is no death. So we have to kind of adopt his mindset if we want to go all the way. And that's what this is saying. Yes, he plays a mighty role in your healing. And he can be invoked. He can be invited in to you, into your life. Well, he's already there anyway. You need to be aware of that inner presence, right? But you have to be the one that calls on it. He's not going to be in your awareness if you don't call on him to be in your awareness, is the point that this is making. He has overcome death because he has accepted life. He has recognized himself as God created him. And in doing so, he has recognized all living things as part of him. There is now no limit on his power because his power is of God. So has his name become the name of God, for he no longer sees himself as separate from him, meaning God. So he's ended the separation. That's basically it. What's the Christ? The Christ is God's Son as God created him, and he never separated. He never went into the illusion of separation. He never fell out of absolute love. He never fell out of that awareness, right? So he never left the heavenly home. He never did. He never made up a hell. You could say he never made up a hell. Now, what being in your life do you know who's never made up a hell? Good question, huh? Well, if you could have a relationship with that being, where would he lead you? Where would he take you? It would be perfect healing. It would be perfect heaven on earth. It would be into the holiness of your true self, which is what you are. So we all are suffering from some form of amnesia where we forgot who we are. And it's don't feel guilty about it. Everybody's done this. And this has happened over eons of time. It hasn't just taken, a few mistakes. It's like mankind has sort of, drifted from his divine connection for ages and ages and ages. And now it's like, okay, we want to go on the fast track to restoring ourselves to that awareness. And in doing so, we need examples of spiritual masters or teachers, if you want to call them that, who can put us on the right track, and we can undo quickly, as painlessly as possible, but sometimes it does take us through some bumps and scrapes, the decisions that we made that put us in this mess in the first place. So, all right, so we have that in the Course in Miracles. We have that course of atonement, of forgiveness, of inner correction, right? Forgiveness is an inner correction. And we're taking that responsibility and we're practicing that and we're doing that. I think we're all doing that in this group. Well, let's see if we can speed that process up. And that's what this lesson's about. To the degree we can have this direct relationship with the Christ and invite him in and listen and be guided, it's like, what could be better? It's like a presence of wisdom always there, always directing you. But you're the one that has to pay attention, and this is the role of the teacher. The role of the teacher is be there for the student, but it's the student who has to come to place their illusions at the altar of truth. Truth will never go after you. If you're unwilling, it'll never seek you out in your hell and say, well, you got to make a change. No, you have to see, I need to make the change. I need to let go. I need to forgive. I need to lay my illusions at the altar of truth and let them go. And then when you make that one step, or you make that step towards liberation, the teacher will be there and the teacher will take 10 steps towards you. But you have to initiate it, so to speak. So this is saying, what does this mean for you? It means that in remembering Jesus, you are remembering God. The whole relationship of the Son to the Father lies in him. His part in the sonship is also yours, and his completed learning guarantees your own success. So the Christ has transcended learning. It's nothing more for him to learn. He's already connected. He's already in that divine state, that universal, unseparated state. And he's leading us to that state. And that's why we use him as our teacher, so that we can take another step, let go, clean up, heal lower levels of confusion, and ascend. So he's helping us on this ascension. And that's the whole purpose of the Course in Miracles, is to lift you out of the self you made up, which has all the problems, into self that God created that has no problems. None. Now, you may, as you go up that ladder, gain more compassion, gain more insight, gain more wisdom, and you see, well, your life simplifies, your life has more trust, your life has more grace. So you yourself are going up that ladder, and your life is getting more orderly, more simple, more beautiful, more peaceful. All right, but as you go up that ladder, you're also moving into your own destiny of your own form of divine service. So then you may be more aware of things happening, like, okay, people, things, encounters down here, that now you're responsible for helping someone else go up, right? So even though, yes, you have this environment, you have this holiness around you, you have this space of certainty, and you have a divine mission, so to speak. Well, now your mission is going to get more and more, and responsibilities that are yours, but now they're still going to lead you to more joy. You've taken them on. So then, okay, now you're responsible for helping others also go up that ladder. So your life broadens, okay? Your life broadens into divine service. And then the divine service, things are going to be thrown at you, and you can respond or not. But the Christ would always respond to the need, always, no matter what. I'll give you an example. Had a little thing happen in the last couple of weeks. I might have shared when Sandra and I had to leave my sister's house. We had to then go to the airport and rebook our flights home, because we had a few more days there in Kansas City, and now we're going home. So we went right to the airport and rechanged our flights to go home. Well, during that time, we're waiting for our flight, and this lady comes up to us, and she's a bit distraught, and she had just been to a funeral of her own mother, right? And I'm not sure if I told you this. I think I did. Well, then, so she's talking about the funeral, and there was this beautiful blanket with her mother on it, and she didn't have the money to also buy one of these blankets, but she really wanted one. So later, when we got home, we sent her the money by PayPal to get the blanket. Well, now, okay, fast forward like 4 or 5 months later, she gives me a call and she says, I'm virtually homeless, and I'm being evicted from my house and blah, 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 and da, da, da. And I need X amount of money to stay in the shelter and blah, blah, blah. And I'm, part of my ego is going, oh no, now she's like got my number and she's going to be asking me for money and blah, 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 blah. Well, part of my mind was saying that, right? But part of my mind was also saying, you got plenty of money. What's the big deal? If she needs $100 to go in a shelter, what's the big deal? So I got off it and I sent her the money. I sent her the money for the shelter. And then she, got back to me. And I also said, look, you're going to have to, you can be in the shelter, but that's only temporary. You're going to have to, we had this conversation. And I said, well, you've got to find something productive to do with yourself so you can start earning your money, take care of yourself, etc. And so I think she heard me. So within about 2 weeks, she called me back and she said, oh, the miracle happened. The shelter found me housing and it's perfect for me. And this church paid my first month's rent. And then I went to this interview in a hospital to work as an aide, and they hired me. So I have a job and now I have an apartment. But right now, between now and then, when I get my first paycheck, I'm out of money and I need food. So I sent her another $100. I said, okay, will this get you over till you can get your paycheck and you can get the food? And she said, yeah, fine. So I sent her another $100 by PayPal. And so, okay, like the old Mark would have tried to avoid that kind of an encounter, and not get sucked into somebody's neediness and all that. But now I just surrendered to it. And I said, look, to myself, I'm saying, why do you have all that money in the bank if you're not going to use it to help people when the need is there and it's being put on your doorstep? It's not like I go out and try to find homeless people to give them money and get them out of their mess, right? But this person was right in my face. And it's almost like those divine forces sent her to me. The minute my sister kind of kicked me out of the house, it's like, now I have a new lesson to learn. Can I really be there for somebody in need, right? Can I really be there? And maybe that's what I needed to learn with my sister. And so, okay, life's giving me this chance. And this lady shows up and I totally took care of her. And that was different. So this is what I mean when you go up your ladder of holiness, your orderliness in your life gets more. You have more order in your life. You have more money in your bank account. You have more happiness in the things that you're doing, right? But now, as you're going up into that kind of heavenly state, more people down who need your help are going to come out of the woodwork. And you're going to be asked to respond to them in such a way that truly is helpful, and you're not running away, So this is, expect this to happen. And it's also the role of the Christ, the role of the Christ, he hung out with tax collectors and people in the brothels, and, he would be in basically the local pub having a beer with them, and then he'd be criticized. Well, and then they ask him, he says, well, doctors with sick people. So this is what's going to happen. People that are in need are going to come your way, and you can respond to them or not, but the Christ would respond. So the Christ's mission is to help others get out of their dire straits, Not that you have to go looking for them. They will be sent to you. And it could come in various different forms. It's like this kind of homeless lady was kind of a classic version, but there may be other ways that you're going to be asked to step forward and serve. And it's going to be a beautiful journey. So get ready. I think of that lesson 245, your peace is with me, Father, I am safe. If you really read that prayer carefully, it's saying, your peace is with me, Father, I am safe. Your peace surrounds me, Father. Where I go, your peace goes there with me. I shed your light on everyone I meet. Then it says, I bring it to the desolate, the lonely and afraid. I give your peace to those who suffer pain or grieve for loss or think they are bereft of hope and happiness. Send them to me, Father, for I would save your son and recognize that they're the same as me. So that prayer, it's like when you get in that state where you're safe, you're connected, you're really in this Christ presence, right? And you're really in that. Well, then what's your job here? It's not to go meditate in a cave. It's to be the light in the midst of the dark, And what's the dark? Well, the dark's going to be all those people that are desolate and afraid and unhappy and got a problem, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to be the Ganesh that removes the problem and removes the obstacle. So that's your function. And it could be just as simple as you're just going to forgive. You're going to forgive your sister, you're going to forgive your neighbor. Now, you might want to move if he's noisy and keeps you up at night, but that will be provided, so you don't have to worry about that either. Yeah. Well, let's complete this. What does it mean for you to call upon the Christ? It means that in remembering Jesus, you are remembering God. The whole relationship of the Son to the Father lies in him, and his part in the sonship is also yours. That means his part as being the unseparated son or unseparated daughter, that now becomes your function. You are going to end the separation in yourself when you call upon the Christ. His completed learning guarantees your own success. Now, this is why you need a spiritual master. I remember Tara Singh saying in a lecture, because he had spent 30 years with Krishnamurti, right? And then he'd spent all those 4 or 5 intense years with Dr. Shukman every day. And he said, I just don't think without the help of a spiritual master, anybody can make it all the way. So there you have it. It's my experience that was a true statement. I mean, without my relationship with Tara Singh, I could never have any clarity about the Course in Miracles. It would just be intellectual. It would be intellectual knowing, which would be meaningless thought. I would never have the contact with that stillness of the peace of God in actuality, if it weren't for my teacher, Tara Singh, imparting that to me. And same with Sandra and Babaji. She wouldn't have been the teacher that she was all these years without that connection to the spiritual master. And we have it, fortunately, we have it in the Course in Miracles. We can relate to Jesus that way. He is the spiritual master, and we're all students of his. And this is making that very clear, this section in the teacher's manual. Would the greatest teacher be unavailable to those who follow him? Well, obviously not. If we're following his teachings by being students of the Course in Miracles, he's available. He's available right now, this second, this moment, to invoke, to be present with. You know, and he lays it out. I mean, there's even a lesson. Into Christ's presence would we enter now, serenely unaware of everything except his shining face and perfect love. Well, are we going to enter that presence? Are we? He's always there. That presence is always there, 24/7, 365. Now, do we show up 24/7, 365 to enter into it? That's the question. I think obviously we all know, yeah, sometimes we show up, sometimes we don't. Well, why not? What's the don't? What are we doing when we're not showing up? Thinking we can manage it ourselves, of course. And usually that's the ego, maybe making some little new version of our made up heaven that eventually turns to decay, you know? So I'm just bringing it to your awareness, right? So these inner decisions you have to make yourself, but I'm just bringing it to your awareness. The name of Jesus Christ as such is but a symbol, but it becomes the shining symbol of the Word of God, so close to what it stands for that the little space between the two is lost, between the reality of the Christ and the symbol of the Christ. They're so close in nature. I mean, that is such a holy utterance, like saying Om Namah Shivaya. It's like a mantra, like the name of Jesus Christ. That's like a mantra, right? And this is saying, well, the mantra, which is a symbol, is so close to the real nature of the Christ presence. It stands for that little space between the two, which is almost none now. The moment that the name is called to mind, remembering the name of Jesus Christ is to give thanks for all the gifts that God has given you. So, yeah, you know, it's interesting. And I mentioned Joel Osteen, who gives these very poignant sermons. They're only 29 minutes long. They're never more than like, they never go over 30 minutes. Most of them are like 28 minutes, 29 minutes, right? So at the very end of that, and this is really interesting. Like, how do I relate to it? How would I have related to it 30 years ago? He says, well, if you've really heard me and you accept Jesus Christ into your heart, that means you're born again. He says that. Now, like 30 years ago, I would have said, oh, run the other way. All these born again people, they're just like, you know, they're crazy. They're cultish. They're not getting the essence of it. It's just a belief system to them, and they're fooling themselves, and they're stuck in, you know, this dichotomy of good and evil, and just run for your life from anything that says born again, right? Well, now I find myself, because his sermon is so metaphysically perfect. I mean, he is talking about thought, and he is talking about how we create our life with our thoughts, and how we have to change our thoughts, and we have to align ourselves with the divine connection, which in his case, he's talking about Jesus, right? Which we're also talking about in the Course. And then when he says that thing, well, if you've really received the truth of these words, you've let Jesus into your heart and you're born again. And I find myself saying, yay, I'm born again, you know, after I listen to him. And it's like, God, I would never have done that. Not even in my years with Tara Singh would I ever have even remotely thought of saying that's a truth. You know, it's emotional. It's like being emotionally taken over. But with him, I don't find it that. I find the clarity of what he's saying is equally as clear as what you're hearing in the Course in Miracles. And it has no tinge of guilt or false church theology or any of that stuff. It's just purely inspirational. It's purely uplifting. It's like purely taking us out of this lower self we made up into this higher self of the Christ consciousness. And he does that so perfectly in 29 minutes. So I'm inspired, you know, and this is saying the same thing. It's like there's some point as students of the Course in Miracles where we really have to invoke the teacher. We really have to invoke the Christ into our decision-making process and have a direct relationship with that wisdom, with that clarity, with that truth. So that's what it's saying. Let me just get through this to get it to the conclusion. No one who has become a true and dedicated teacher of God forgets his brothers. Yet what he can offer them is limited by what he learns himself. Then turn to one who laid all limits by, that would be the Christ, and went beyond the furthest reach of learning. He will take you with him, for he did not go alone, and you were with him then as you are now. Now, yesterday we did a podcast on reincarnation, and it was saying that it wasn't all that important to believe in it, although don't make it an issue. If it's helpful, fine. If it's not helpful, fine. But don't get distracted into past lives and all that. But now this is actually saying, and it also says, when you were born, was that when you first were created? No. I mean, you were forever who you are, and you will be forever who you are. And there's no time, and that goes in both directions, right? But as far as reincarnation, don't get so obsessed with it. But now this is saying you were with him then as you are now. Well, what's the then? You were always with the Christ. You always had a yearning to rise into this higher level of divine awareness. And that's why you have it in this lifetime. You always had that yearning to go higher, to go deeper, to go towards truth, towards your divine connection, to end the separation. You always had that. So therefore, you were always with the Christ. It's kind of reassuring, isn't it? To think that, this isn't the first time we've been looking towards wisdom, looking towards a divine teacher to help us. Jesus has come to answer your need. In him you find God's answer. Do you then teach with him? For he is with you, and he is always here. So one of the lessons says, I will live with you and teach with you if you will think with me. So that's what Jesus is saying. I will live with you, I'll teach with you, but you have to think with me. And what's the thinking with him? Well, it's the lessons in the Course in Miracles. That's thinking with the Christ mind. Heaven is the decision I must make. Who but Christ could say that? The stillness of the peace of God is mine. I rest in God. There's nothing to fear. These are truths that we have to make our own. And the Christ can help us make them our own because we're not used to it. The ego is not used to those thoughts. Oh, you tell me I have nothing to fear? Oh, I face my workload every day, and there's 500 problems that could go wrong, and you're telling me I have nothing to fear. That's the ego, that's the world we live in. So this is an opportunity to have a different relationship. And it's like, does Jesus have a special place in our healing? Absolutely, yes. And it's wonderful in this last paragraph. It says there's other spiritual masters and there's other situations around the planet where people are going to find a different teacher. That's okay. The form has to change to meet the need in those situations. So the symbols will change, but the content will never change. But it's okay to have these many different, you've got Babaji in India, you've got Muhammad in the Middle East, different traditions with different spiritual masters, and that's okay. But you're here studying the Course in Miracles. You are here in this moment. So therefore, you have a relationship to the Christ, and why not use it? So, okay. All right, so I want to just play about 5 minutes of Tara Singh. And I think what would be best if I play this and then save your questions to next week and write me. And if you want to hear more of Tara Singh, I can give you the links to order these. There are 4 different CDs and they're offered, so you can download them. And if you want to go deeper, I suggest you do that. They're called What is the Christ? But so right now I'm going to present about 5 or 10 minutes and then save your questions and write to me this week. And then we'll take up where we left off next week with this. Okay? All right. All right. So this is What is the Christ? And it's the 4th. There are 4 lectures, and this is actually number 4. Okay, I stepped out a little bit, giving you a dose of Tara Singh, and I think that we all have this unwillingness that we have to deal with, and he makes that very clear, because his whole approach was the Course in Miracles isn't to be learned, it's to be lived. So what would prevent us from actually living the Course, having that direct relationship with the Christ, and going all the way? So he was pretty tough on us. And this thing about unwillingness, it's like we have to transcend the idea level and get into the actuality of it. So when he was talking about when you say the stillness of the peace of God is mine, that's a lesson, right? I think it's 273. The stillness of the peace of God is mine. And if you don't feel it, if it's not an actuality, if you're not in that state, then there's unwillingness. There's something blocking it. And he's saying, well, in order to get to the stillness of the peace of God, we all have to deal with that unwillingness. What is the resistance? What is the diversion? What's the thing that we think we can't do? In rebirthing, we talk about people's personal lie. Usually that's running us too. I can't, not good enough, I'm wrong. Those kind of thoughts. That would be part of unwillingness. So we'll take this back up again, but I just wanted to give you a taste of Tara Singh. And I think that we all are aspiring to get it fully. And we're all dedicated to overcoming our unwillingness, or we wouldn't be here. So let's leave it at that. And I hope I didn't throw you into a bummer listening to Tara Singh, but if you listen to the whole thing, towards the end of that hour, he takes you out of the unwillingness into this stillness of the peace of God. And then you have the certainty that you can put yourself in that state. All right, God bless you. Write to me this week. If you want to order those lectures, they're sold on the Joseph Plan website, and I can give you that link and you can download them. They're only like $20 for 4 hours. So, okay. God bless. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Much love.